You want to know how to build unshakable authority that makes people bow to your will without them even realizing why. That makes rivals hesitate before challenging you. That transforms you into the silent architect of every room you enter. You want to master the art of strategic manipulation, so refined that others mistake your calculated moves for natural charisma. Most people believe authority comes from titles, from loud voices, from aggressive displays of dominance. They are wrong. True authority is invisible. It flows through fear that never announces itself, through manipulation so subtle that your targets thank you for controlling them. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that the greatest rulers are those who can bend others to their will while appearing to serve their interests. In this monologue, I will reveal the hidden architecture of unshakable authority. Not the kind that screams for attention, but the kind that whispers commands and watches the world obey. We will explore 7 pillars of strategic manipulation that will transform you from someone who reacts to social hierarchies into someone who constructs them. By the end of this, you will not just understand how authority works. You will know how to weaponize it. Stay with me until the final word. Comment below with the phrase "I architect power" to signal that you are ready for this transformation. Let us begin. The first pillar is the foundation upon which all authority rests, the psychology of perceived inevitability. Authority is not about being the strongest person in the room. It is about being the person others believe cannot be defeated. This perception creates a psychological gravity that pulls people into your orbit before they consciously decide to follow you. Think about this carefully. When you enter any social hierarchy, people are constantly assessing threat levels, value propositions, and power dynamics. They make split-second calculations about who to align with, who to avoid, and who to submit to. Your job is to hijack this process by projecting an aura of inevitability so strong that resistance feels futile. This begins with your relationship to outcomes. Most people reveal their desperation through micro-expressions, voice tonality, and body language. They lean forward when they want something. They speak faster when they fear rejection. They fidget when uncertain. Every one of these signals broadcasts vulnerability, and vulnerability is the enemy of authority. You must train yourself to appear as though every outcome serves your larger strategy. When you win, you expected it. When you lose, you planned it. When others succeed, you allowed it. This is not delusion. This is strategic positioning. People need to believe that you operate from a level of chess they cannot see. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold, but he also understood that boldness without the appearance of control is mere recklessness. The authority you are building must feel inevitable because people submit to inevitability. They fight against uncertainty, but they surrender to what seems destined. Practice this in small interactions. First, when someone challenges your opinion, do not rush to defend it. Pause, let silence hang in the air. Then respond as though their challenge was something you anticipated and were curious to address. When someone tries to interrupt you, do not compete for airtime. Stop speaking, look at them with mild interest, and wait. Most people will stumble over themselves to apologize and defer back to you. This is the beginning of authority. Not demanding respect, but creating conditions where respect becomes the natural response. If you understand this principle, comment below "My authority is inevitable." The second pillar is the mastery of strategic fear deployment. Fear is perhaps the most misunderstood tool in the arsenal of authority. Most people think fear requires aggression, threats, or displays of anger. This is amateur psychology. Professional fear is invisible, surgical, and far more effective than any loud demonstration. Strategic fear works by making people aware of what they could lose by opposing you, not by threatening what you will do to them. The difference is crucial. When you threaten, you reveal your cards and invite escalation. When you simply make people aware of their vulnerabilities, you let their own imagination do the work. Here is how this operates in practice. Instead of telling someone what will happen if they cross you, you demonstrate your awareness of their dependencies, their insecurities, their pressure points. You might mention, almost casually, that you notice their project depends heavily on cooperation from certain departments. You might observe that their reputation in the industry seems built on relationships that require maintenance. You are not threatening. You are simply displaying your understanding of the ecosystem they depend on. This creates what psychologists call anticipatory anxiety. People begin to worry not about what you will do, but about what you could do. Their minds fill in the blanks with scenarios far worse than anything you would actually implement. This is the beauty of strategic fear. It requires no effort from you once deployed, because the target maintains it themselves. But fear alone is insufficient for lasting authority. People who only fear you will eventually conspire against you. The key is to balance fear with utility. You want people to be afraid of losing access to you, not afraid of your presence itself. This means you must simultaneously be someone they need and someone they cannot afford to oppose. Think of yourself as a resource they depend on, but a resource with standards. You provide value, insight, connections, opportunities, but only to those who respect the hierarchy you are constructing. Those who challenge that hierarchy do not receive punishment. They simply discover that your resources are no longer available to them. This is how you build authority that sustains itself. People police their own behavior because they understand the cost of losing your favor. They become invested in maintaining your position because your position maintains their access to what they need. The most sophisticated practitioners of this art never appear to be withholding anything. They seem generous, helpful, even kind. But somehow, those who oppose them find themselves isolated, overlooked, excluded from opportunities. The connection is never obvious enough to prove, but it is consistent enough to create the desired behavioral changes in everyone watching. If you are ready to deploy fear as a surgical instrument rather than a blunt weapon, comment below "Fear serves my purpose." The third pillar involves the weaponization of information asymmetry. Authority thrives in the gap between what you know and what others know. The wider this gap, the more dependent people become on your perspective, your insights, your interpretation of events. Information is not just power. Information is the raw material from which authority is constructed. Most people treat information carelessly. They share what they know to appear valuable, to build rapport, to satisfy their need for social connection. This is a fundamental error. Information shared is power transferred. Every piece of valuable insight you give away is leverage you no longer possess. Instead, you must become a collector and curator of information while revealing as little as possible about what you actually know. This creates a dynamic where people come to you seeking understanding, clarification, and context. They begin to depend on your interpretation of events because they lack the full picture that you possess. This process begins with strategic listening. While others are talking, you are gathering intelligence. You note contradictions between what people say and what they do. You track patterns in behavior that reveal underlying motivations. You collect details about personal situations, professional pressures, and hidden relationships. All of this becomes your strategic database, but collection is only half the equation. The other half is strategic disclosure. You reveal information in carefully measured doses, always leaving people wanting more. You answer questions with partial truths that create more questions. You share insights that demonstrate the depth of your knowledge without revealing the full extent of it. For example, when someone asks for your opinion on a complex situation, you might say something like, "There are several factors at play here that most people are not considering," and then mention one or two elements while implying that you are aware of others. This positions you as someone who sees the bigger picture while making others feel like they are operating with incomplete information. The psychological effect is profound. People begin to assume you know more than you are saying. They start to believe that you have access to information sources they do not. They become cautious about contradicting you because they fear you might know something that would make them look foolish. This dynamic transforms you from someone who participates in conversations into someone who guides them. Others look to you for validation of their interpretations. They seek your approval before committing to positions. They defer to your judgment because they believe it is based on superior information. The beauty of information asymmetry is that it compounds over time. More people come to you for insight, the more information you collect from them. The more information you collect, the more valuable your perspective becomes. Eventually, you become the central node through which understanding flows, and controlling that flow gives you tremendous influence over group dynamics. Remember, knowledge shared carelessly is power lost forever. Knowledge shared strategically is power multiplied. If you understand how to turn information into influence, comment below "I control the narrative." The fourth pillar centers on the manipulation of social proof and consensus reality. Human beings are fundamentally social creatures who look to others for cues about how to think, feel, and behave. This tendency, while natural, creates tremendous opportunities for those who understand how to shape group perception. Authority is often less about your actual capabilities and more about the collective belief in your capabilities. If you can control how others perceive you, you can control how they respond to you. This requires understanding that reality, in social contexts, is largely constructed through shared agreement rather than objective truth. The process begins with identifying key influencers within any social hierarchy. These are not necessarily the people with formal titles, but rather the individuals whose opinions carry weight with others. They might be well-connected, highly respected, or simply charismatic. Your job is to win these people over first, because their endorsement will cascade through the broader group. This is where strategic manipulation becomes an art form. You do not simply try to impress these influencers. Instead, you create situations where supporting you serves their interests. You might provide them with information that makes them look insightful when they share it. You might ask for their advice on matters where their expertise is genuine, making them feel valued and respected. You might create opportunities for them to succeed in ways that subtly connect back to your influence. Once you have secured the support of key influencers, their positive perception of you begins to shape how others see you. People notice that respected individuals seek your input, defer to your judgment, or speak positively about your contributions. This creates a bandwagon effect where supporting you becomes the socially intelligent thing to do. But building social proof is only half the strategy. The other half involves undermining the social proof of potential rivals. This must be done with extreme subtlety, because obvious attacks will backfire and damage your reputation. Instead, you plant seeds of doubt through careful questioning, strategic silences, and subtle implications. For example, when a rival makes a claim or proposal, you might respond with something like, "That is an interesting perspective. I wonder how it accounts for the challenges we have seen with similar approaches in the past." You are not directly attacking their idea, but you are introducing doubt and positioning yourself as someone who thinks more comprehensively. The goal is to create a situation where supporting your rivals feels risky or uninformed, while supporting you feels safe and intelligent. People want to be on the winning side, and they want to appear sophisticated in their judgments. If you can make alignment with you seem like the smart choice, most people will make that choice without needing additional persuasion. This manipulation of social proof operates below the level of conscious awareness for most people. They do not realize their opinions are being shaped by carefully orchestrated influences. They believe they are making independent judgments based on their own observations. This makes the technique particularly powerful because people do not resist influence they do not recognize. Over time, this creates a self-reinforcing cycle where your authority becomes accepted as natural and obvious. People forget that it was constructed through strategic manipulation. It simply becomes part of the social reality they inhabit. If you are ready to architect consensus, comment below. I shape what others believe. The fifth pillar involves mastering the strategic use of silence and calculated ambiguity. Most people fear silence and rush to fill it with words, explanations, and justifications. This impulse reveals weakness and transfers power to those who can remain comfortable in the void. Silence, when wielded properly, becomes one of your most powerful tools for building authority. Strategic silence creates psychological pressure that forces others to reveal more than they intended. When you ask a question and then remain quiet, people feel compelled to elaborate, to explain, to fill the uncomfortable space with additional information. This often leads them to share details they had not planned to reveal, giving you insights into their true motivations, concerns, and vulnerabilities. But silence is not just about gathering information. It is also about projecting an aura of depth and consideration. When you pause before responding to questions, people assume you are processing complex information or considering multiple factors. This makes your eventual response seem more valuable and well-reasoned, even if the content is relatively simple. The key is to make your silences feel intentional rather than awkward. This requires practice and confidence. You must be comfortable with the discomfort others feel during these pauses. You must resist the urge to rescue them from the tension by speaking prematurely. The person who breaks first in these psychological standoffs is the person who surrenders power. Calculated ambiguity works in partnership with strategic silence to maintain your mystique and flexibility. When people cannot pin down exactly what you think or what you plan to do, they cannot effectively oppose you or manipulate you. Ambiguity keeps your options open while forcing others to guess at your intentions. This does not mean being vague about everything. Clear communication is important when you want specific actions taken. But when it comes to your broader strategies, your personal opinions on sensitive topics, or your future plans, maintaining some level of ambiguity serves your interests. For example, when asked about your position on a controversial issue, you might respond with something like there are compelling arguments on multiple sides, and I think the most important thing is finding solutions that actually work. This response reveals nothing about your personal position while making you appear thoughtful and pragmatic. The psychological effect of this combination, silence plus ambiguity, is that people project their own assumptions onto you. They tend to assume you agree with them on important matters because you have not explicitly disagreed. They imagine that your silence indicates approval of their ideas. This creates a false sense of alignment that you can leverage when necessary. Meanwhile, your actual thoughts and plans remain protected from scrutiny and interference. You can observe how situations develop before committing to specific positions. You can adapt your approach based on new information without appearing inconsistent. You maintain maximum flexibility while others lock themselves into rigid stances. This pillar requires significant self-discipline because the urge to explain yourself, to be understood, to be liked, runs deep in human psychology. But remember that being understood is often the enemy of being influential. Mystery creates magnetism. Clarity creates vulnerability. Practice this in low-stakes situations first. Let conversations breathe. Ask questions and then wait for complete answers. When people make assumptions about your views, neither confirm nor deny them unless doing so serves a specific strategic purpose. Over time, you will develop comfort with being misunderstood in service of being influential. If you understand the power of what is not said, comment below. My silence commands attention. The sixth pillar focuses on the strategic management of dependencies and resource control. True authority comes not from what you can take from people, but from what they cannot afford to lose from you. This requires transforming yourself into a critical resource within any social or professional hierarchy. The process begins with identifying what people in your environment actually need, not what they say they need. Most individuals are poor at articulating their real dependencies because they do not fully understand the systems they operate within. Your job is to map these hidden dependencies and position yourself as a key node within them. This might involve becoming the person who facilitates important connections between others. It might mean developing expertise in areas that others depend on but do not fully understand. It might require building relationships with external resources that others need access to. The specific approach matters less than the underlying principle, making yourself difficult to replace. But creating dependencies is not enough. You must also manage them strategically to maximize your authority. This means being generous enough that people value what you provide, but selective enough that they never take it for granted. You want people to feel grateful for your contributions while remaining slightly uncertain about your continued support. One effective technique is the strategic withdrawal of resources or attention. When someone begins to take your contributions for granted or challenges your position, you do not argue or threaten. You simply become less available to them. Your responses become slower, less detailed, less helpful. You redirect your energy toward others who show proper appreciation. This approach works because it lets natural consequences teach the lesson rather than requiring you to deliver punishment directly. The person experiences the cost of losing access to your resources without being able to claim that you are being unfair or vindictive. They learn to value what you provide by experiencing its absence. Meanwhile, others observe this dynamic and adjust their own behavior accordingly. They see that maintaining good relationships with you leads to continued access to valuable resources, while taking you for granted leads to isolation. This creates a powerful incentive structure that reinforces your authority without requiring constant enforcement. The most sophisticated version of this strategy involves creating what economists call network effects. This happens when the value of your resources increases as more people use them. For example, if you become the person who organizes valuable networking opportunities, each new participant makes the opportunity more valuable for everyone else. This creates strong incentives for people to maintain their relationship with you and to recruit others into your network. Resource control also extends to information, relationships, and opportunities. The more you can position yourself as a gateway to things people want, the more authority you accumulate. But this must be done subtly, without appearing manipulative or self-serving. The ideal situation is one where people compete for your attention and approval while believing that you are simply being helpful and generous. Remember that dependencies work both ways. While you are creating situations where others depend on you, you must be careful not to become overly dependent on any single person or resource. Diversification of your own dependencies is crucial for maintaining the flexibility and independence that authority requires. The goal is to become someone others cannot afford to lose while ensuring that you could survive the loss of any individual relationship. This asymmetry in dependencies is what transforms influence into authority. If you are ready to become indispensable, comment below "They need what I control." The seventh and final pillar involves the mastery of strategic positioning and timing. Authority is not just about what you do, but when and how you do it. The same action can build or destroy your influence depending on the context in which it occurs. Mastering timing means understanding the rhythms of social dynamics and positioning your moves for maximum impact. Strategic positioning begins with understanding that every social hierarchy has moments of flux when power structures become malleable. These might occur during leadership transitions, organizational changes, crisis situations, or periods of uncertainty. During stable times, challenging existing hierarchies is difficult and risky. During times of flux, the same challenges can appear natural and necessary. Your job is to anticipate these moments and position yourself to capitalize on them. This requires long-term thinking and patience. You may need to spend months or even years building relationships, gathering information, and developing capabilities that will become valuable when the right moment arrives. When that moment comes, your response must be swift and decisive. Hesitation during windows of opportunity often means missing them entirely, but this decisiveness must be balanced with careful calculation. Moving too early can expose you to unnecessary risk. Moving too late can mean the opportunity has passed to someone else. Timing also applies to how you reveal your capabilities and intentions. Most people either hide their abilities too completely, making them invisible and undervalued, or display them too obviously, making themselves appear threatening or boastful. The art is in the strategic revelation of competence at moments when it will be most appreciated and least threatening. For example, during a crisis when others are struggling, stepping forward with solutions demonstrates leadership and competence. But making the same display during calm periods might be seen as grandstanding or attention-seeking. Context determines perception, and perception determines the impact of your actions. Strategic positioning also involves understanding your role in the broader ecosystem of relationships and interests. Sometimes the most powerful position is not at the center of attention, but adjacent to it. Being the trusted advisor to the decision maker can be more valuable than being the decision maker yourself, especially if the decision maker faces significant risks and pressures. This requires ego management and long-term thinking. You must be willing to let others receive public credit while you exercise real influence behind the scenes. You must be patient enough to build authority gradually rather than grabbing for immediate recognition. You must be sophisticated enough to understand that visible power and actual power are not always the same thing. The mastery of timing extends to how you handle conflicts and challenges to your authority. Sometimes the best response is immediate and firm. Sometimes it is delayed and subtle. Sometimes it is to ignore the challenge entirely, letting your established authority make the challenger appear foolish without any response from you. Reading these situations correctly requires deep understanding of the personalities involved, the broader context, and the likely consequences of different approaches. This is where experience and judgment become crucial. The principles can be learned, but their application requires wisdom that comes from careful observation and practice. As you develop these skills, you will begin to see social hierarchies as dynamic systems that can be influenced and shaped rather than fixed structures that you must simply navigate. You will start to recognize patterns and opportunities that others miss. You will develop the confidence to make strategic moves that seem risky to others, but are actually calculated based on your superior understanding of the situation. This transformation from someone who reacts to social dynamics to someone who architects them represents the ultimate expression of strategic authority. You become not just a player in the game, but someone who influences the rules by which the game is played. If you understand that timing transforms tactics into triumphs, comment below "I choose my moments." These 7 pillars: perceived inevitability, strategic fear deployment, information asymmetry, social proof manipulation, silence and ambiguity, dependency creation, and strategic timing, form the architecture of unshakable authority. But understanding them intellectually is not enough. They must be integrated into your daily behavior until they become natural expressions of your character rather than conscious techniques you apply. This integration requires practice, patience, and a willingness to think several moves ahead in every social interaction. It requires the discipline to sometimes sacrifice short-term gains for long-term positioning. It requires the wisdom to know when to reveal your capabilities and when to keep them hidden. Most importantly, it requires understanding that true authority is not about dominating others through force or fear, but about creating conditions where others choose to follow your lead because doing so serves their interests. The most powerful form of control is the kind that people embrace willingly because they believe it benefits them. As you begin to implement these principles, you will notice changes in how others respond to you. People will start seeking your opinion more frequently. They will defer to your judgment in situations where they previously might have argued. They will compete for your attention and approval. They will become more careful about how they treat you. These changes will not happen overnight, and they may not be immediately obvious. Authority builds gradually, like water slowly carving through stone. But once established, it becomes a self-reinforcing system that grows stronger over time. Remember that with this knowledge comes responsibility. The ability to shape others' behavior and influence their decisions is a form of power that should be used thoughtfully. The goal is not to harm others or to serve only your own interests, but to create situations where your leadership benefits everyone involved. The world is full of people who mistake aggression for authority, manipulation for strategy, and selfishness for strength. You now have the knowledge to rise above these crude approaches and develop genuine influence based on understanding, patience, and strategic thinking. The choice of how to use this knowledge is yours. You can remain as you are, subject to the whims and manipulations of others who understand these principles better than you do. Or you can begin the process of transformation that will make you someone others look to for guidance, leadership, and direction. If this knowledge has awakened something in you, if you recognize the power of what you have learned here, then take action. Like this video to signal that you understand the value of strategic thinking. Subscribe to ensure you continue receiving insights that will sharpen your understanding of power dynamics. Turn on notifications so you never miss an opportunity to expand your strategic capabilities. The path to unshakable authority is not easy, but it is available to anyone willing to think deeply, act strategically, and remain patient while their influence grows. The question is not whether you can build this kind of authority. The question is whether you will choose to do so. Your transformation begins with your next interaction. Make it count.